meet you. I'm Dan, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
How are we guys, alright?
Yeah, good, yeah.
Thank you very well.
So do I need to have a property in mind before I get a mortgage?
The simple answer is no, although it might help, depending obviously what you're going to be looking for. So if you guys have got a certain property in mind, i.e. a house over a flat, then it might just be worth looking around the areas that you want to buy in, because that'll give you an idea automatically of what sort of price that looks like before you've even started looking. So when you come in to have a chat about the mortgage, you then are automatically looking at properties up to 300,000, for example, so I know what I need to get and work towards for it to work to you guys. But if you haven't looked at properties and you've done nothing at all, it really doesn't help. I can essentially look at all that for you, so that when you leave the meeting you can say, right, we can afford up to X amount, and then you can set your filters on Rightmove and whatnot to look at what you can get for what you can afford, essentially.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Cool.
So Dan, what are the benefits of being a first-time buyer?
Yeah, so there are a few being first-time buyers. The main one noticeably would be stamp duty. So when you're applying for a mortgage, there is typically stamp duty tax that would be on purchasing property and land. Being first-time buyers, up to 300,000, you will get a stamp duty relief as such, so you haven't got to pay anything up until that amount. There is then some payable on top of that, but the easiest way to calculate that, if you are looking in excess of 300,000, would be to look at a stamp duty calculator online. Notably then also as well, when you're putting offers in on properties as well, you will be bottom of the chain essentially. So if you guys were selling a property yourselves, you would want first-time buyers applying on your property, because they then round off the chain for you guys. So it makes it nice and easy, and sort of the smaller the chain, the better in that instance. Okay. Lastly, from an affordability point of view, there are some lenders that will give you more preferential affordability income multiples as well, so it can really help maximise what you can borrow for your first property as well.
So what other costs are there to consider when buying a property?
Yes, that's a really good question. A lot of people are a little bit uncertain of what that looks like in terms of what do you need on top of your deposit to have for other costs. Mainly solicitors' cost is probably going to be the other main cost on top of it. You will need a solicitor involved to help with the legal side of the transaction. Typically, depending on what solicitor you go to, they'll charge more or less the same, some more, some less. You're probably looking at a ballpark figure of between £1,300 to £1,600 for that as first-time buyers. Now, if you're looking at new builds or looking to use a lifetime ISA, then that might include or increase the cost, in terms of what that overall package will be. But that's a rough idea as far as solicitors are concerned. You will come across surveys, so valuations on the property that you're buying, to make sure that it's suitable security for the lender to securitise the mortgage against. There are different levels of the survey. Obviously, the more in-depth and thorough ones that they do, the more it will cost. If you just go for the basic one, typically that's free with the lender that you'll go with. Sometimes they do charge a couple of £100 there. Talking about lenders as well, they might have what they call an arrangement fee as part of the product they recommend, or we recommend to you as well. You're looking at ballpark figure then, they call it £999, but roughly £1,000 there. But you can also then look to incorporate that into the mortgage as well and add it to the loan amount rather than pay it up front. And of course, on top of that then is furnishing. Obviously, if you can go as basic or as detailed as you want on that, but that's also something you've got to factor in. Being first-time buyers, maybe living at home, you've got relatively not a lot to bring with you, so that's another cost as well to factor in on top of it.
Why should we use a mortgage broker over going directly to a bank?
Yeah, so when the benefit of using a mortgage broker compared to your bank directly, main advantage of that is that we have multiple lenders. We're what we call whole of market. So the difference between that is that if you go to your bank, which is Barclays, just say for example, they are tied to what they can offer as a product, and also just not on top of the product, but also in terms of their criteria and affordability as well. Every lender is so different in terms of the proposition that they put forward to first-time buyers, to buy-to-lets, to remortgages. So really, my job is to sort of try and fit you into a mould of a lender that is going to be more preferential for you guys. And not necessarily in this instance, as first-time buyers, is the cheapest interest rate going to be the best option for you guys, because affordability will also maybe even trump the interest rate. So if you can get 25, 30 grand more with another lender down the road, but you can't with that lender, but it's a slightly higher interest rate, then that might be more appealing to you guys. So I'd say that's the availability of lenders we have available is the main thing. We also charge no fees for our service as well. So we are fee free. So basically that's the same as going to your bank. They're not going to charge you a fee. So using a broker is essentially looking at the whole of market and also your current bank as well. So we can see, right, this is what your current bank is offering, but we could possibly get you better elsewhere.
Okay, so are mortgages different for a first-time buyer, say if you're buying your second or third property?
Yeah, so the rates, so depending obviously the deposit is obviously the main thing, is the difference that you guys will see. From our point of view, yes, it is slightly different, but from what you guys will see, mainly is going to be the rates. So when you're buying your second or third property, you will have built up a certain amount of equity in your property. So when you buy your first property, the value will go up, your mortgage will come down. So that builds up a certain amount of equity in the property. So when you are then looking at the second or third property that you're looking at, you're going to have a higher deposit. So the higher the deposit, the less risk it is from a lending point of view. So the more preferential the interest rates will be for you in the future. So normally first time buyers, you're probably looking at 5 or 10% in most instances. Some instances you might be looking at more, but because that's a lower interest rate, it's a higher risk. So the interest rates might be slightly higher in that instance. So that's the main differences that you guys would see.
Okay, that makes sense. So obviously this is going to be probably one of the biggest investments
Yep.
to us ever. We've
Yep.
had quite a lot of people talk about protection.
Yep.
What would you suggest, kind of what is that?
Yeah, so so that's we have a duty of care from our point of view. As you mentioned, it's the biggest investment that you're going to be making. I can guarantee you've got phone insurance, you've got car insurance, but a lot of people neglect the actual home and the commitment to that as well. So it's not just your mortgage payments that you've got. You're going to have your council tax, you're going to have your utility bills, which are going through the roof at the moment. So, if anything were to happen to you guys, it's that what if question. There's policies that we can look at that can mitigate that risk for you. Okay, so it's obviously it's going to be budget, costs is going to come into this as well, but the main sort of 3 insurances that we will look at for you guys is your life insurance. Okay, that is it's a bit of a dull subject to talk about, but life insurance pays out on first death. Okay, so that would typically be covered for the mortgage amount, so that whoever is the survivor in that instance has a balance there, they can pay off the mortgage in full. So that's one less commitment they've got to keep up with. You've also got critical illness insurance there as well. That is a lump sum payout, okay? That's on diagnosis of a critical illness, so a cancer, heart attack, stroke, something along those lines, okay? Now you can insure that for as much or as little as you'd possibly want. Obviously, the more insurance you have, the more it will cost as well. So that's why I'd say speak to us, because we are advisors at the end of the day. It's not a hard salesy push on you guys. It's recommending what's best for you guys. So of course that's going to change in the future, but for obviously what we're looking at now, we're going to tailor make that to what you guys are taking out on the mortgage as well. And then obviously lastly, you've got, in terms of the insurance options available, you've got income protection. So that's more of a monthly allowance that will pay a certain amount of your monthly salary if you were, so main example, if you're a builder and you're playing football on the weekend and you break your leg, you're unable to do your day-to-day job. That's the main example that I generally tend to give. So if you can't work, your employer might cover you for a certain amount of time. After that, it normally goes on to statutory sick pay, which is nothing when you do look at what that pays out for. So that's when the income protection comes in and replicates your income, so you can still keep your head afloat in terms of your finances, and that's one less thing to worry about on top of what's already going on in the background.
And you would look at all that?
Of course. So what we do as part of the process is that we'd obviously the mortgage is why you're coming to us. That's the main thing. So once you've found a property, we've got you the mortgage secured, we'd obviously have the discussions prior to that, so we can sort of set that in stone, so you know what to expect when the process happens. That's when we'd obviously bring a separate protection advisor internal within Affinity to look at that for you guys. So he can sit down with you, run through that in a bit more detail in terms of, so you guys might have cover through work, and that's something that we can mould, as I say, that's specific to you guys, rather than just selling everything. It's more specific to what you already have in place at the moment, and we typically put that in place on exchange of contracts. So that's when you're legally liable to proceed with the mortgage, so that, you know, because you're legally liable at exchange of contracts, that's when it's put in place. So if anything were to happen to you guys in between that window, you're covered at that instance, and that's so you'd set the insurance up prior to the completion, so no payments are taken prior to that. It's all then when it completes, when you're liable for the debt.
Lovely, thank you.
Thank you.
So appreciate you guys coming in today just to run through your mortgage requirements. I can imagine it'll probably be a little bit overwhelming in terms of all the information. So if you've got any questions, just let us know. Just give me a call on the mobile, email, or just on the main office line. We'll always be able to get back to you. If I'm in a meeting like this with another client, I'll always be able to get back to you to leave us a message. But other than that, appreciate you guys coming in, and we'll speak soon.
Yeah,
Perfect,
thank you for your
thank you.
time.
Lovely, no problem at all.
Lovely to meet you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice one.
See ya.
Take care.